Alright, so this is the first coding walkthrough video for the Star Beasts project. This is prototype 0.1, the first prototype for the game. Now this prototype introduces some movement code in 3D and also a placeholder playable character for the code to go into. The playable character, as I said, is placeholder. It's currently just a sphere until we get some proper assets for Leo, the main character for Star Beasts. So we've also got in this prototype, as you can see here, zoomed in too much, is a floor for the player to move about on and test the movement code, as well as a little 3D object there to jump around on and basically test out the movement. So what I'm going to do in this video is demonstrate the prototype and what's been added to it essentially, and then go through the code and show you how that works. So if we look here, we've got basic movement. We can rotate the player with the camera and also move using the A key to go left, the D key to go right, the S key to go backwards, and the W key to move forwards, and also the space bar to jump. So we can change the direction the player is going in with the mouse, and then jump like that. Yeah, it's fairly basic movement, but it does the job. We can jump around, a bit buggy. Yeah, we can jump around on here and just test things out really. So next I'm going to show you how the code to move the player was made and essentially what it does. So first thing I'm going to go through is the movement, and then I'll move on to the other script which does the rotating the camera. So it's pretty simple. We just create two floats for the speed of the player running about on the platform and also the height of the jump, how high they can jump when you press space. And that's what we've got here. So then in the start we set those functions. So for speed, for walking speed it's 10f, and for the height it's 400f. It's nowhere near as high as 400 sounds. And then we've got the function for jumping here, which is, as I said, pretty basic. All it does is add a force, so that when the player presses the space bar, it just adds a force, an upward force, so the player goes up and it looks like a jump. Then we times that force by the jump speed so that we can regulate how high they can go. And then the update, we've got the movement here, which is translates the player across the axes and moves their position times speed, which we've demonstrated here in 10f there, and also time. So it creates quite a nice and stable flow as the player moves along. And then if the space key is pressed here, do the jump function, which is this one here. So yeah. Luckily with Unity, with movement, it automatically uses the W, A, S and D keys, so there is no need to actually program them in, which is pretty nice and pretty easy for when you want to just move about. So then we've got rotating the camera. This one was a bit more complicated because it required a little bit more complex code essentially, but I'll go through it here. So what we do here is we set a game object, the target, which is the player, which if we go in here and go to the main camera, we've dragged the player onto the target placeholder there. And then what we've also got is a float for the rotation speed, how fast when you move the mouse, how fast the player turns, and an offset as well there. So this bit here uses the horizontal axis for the mouse times the speed to pan around horizontally. So yeah, so mouse X here is the x-axis, which is horizontal movement, times the rotation speed. It basically determines how fast, as I said, the player moves around, and that turns the character and the camera, respectively. The offset, which we've told about here, is then orientated in the same direction as the player, and then is subtracted from the player's position so that it stays behind them at all times in a third-person perspective. So it means that essentially the camera's not going to be moving around, it's always going to be, as we can see here, it's always going to be right behind the player, no matter what you do. Just good, that's what we want. And the last bit here is just a lookout thing, so it always points to the target. As you can see here, it's always pointing at the player and never deviates from that. So that's essentially a quick walkthrough of the code there. I'll do a last demonstration as well to show you how it works. Yeah, it's pretty basic movement, but it's a good start. And considering I've never done 3D coding before, apart from a brief stint in the first year, I think it's pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to look at, which I'll demonstrate in the next video, is combat and how that might work in a 3D environment. And yeah, that'll be in the next video, I think, which will come out next week.